Welcome to the Great Distraction.
Welcome back, everyone. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is the choice to not have children. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-hosts Joe,
Hola,
Thomas,
aloha,
and Glenn.
howdy, folks.
If this is your first time listening, welcome. We thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. So this is a topic that is near and dear to all of our hearts because we've all spent a lot of time in life thinking about, dealing with, considering, contemplating, you name it. It's a conundrum for sure. And we figured it deserves a good amount of talking about. There's a good discussion here. So we've got all different standpoints here and different reasons for the choices that we've made along the lines. So we're going to bring some different viewpoints to it. We are only going to bring the male viewpoints to it because that's what we've got here. Eventually, we may revisit this with a little bit of a feminine vibe to it. That can be interesting. But so you're going along the course of your life. You're following all the things that society tells us to do. You're checking off the boxes. But eventually, you get to a point where that one box or that one path opens up, and you start hearing from Grandma and Aunt Sally and
usually your mom.
Yeah, or your mom or
dad,
your best friend who's like, dude, you should totally do this. I met the love of my life. She's awesome. We're married now. We're gonna have 5 kids.
That was the same dude that was jumping off a bridge like 3 years before that,
yelling,
"I'm never gonna get married." Woo!
That's right.
So trust me, folks, don't listen to that guy.
That's right. Yeah, so we come to that point where that path opens up or it's laid itself before you, and you're just kind of like, man, is that the point in my life when I'm supposed to start considering multiplying?
And I feel like that's the worst way to do it, to decide whether or not to have kids.
Agreed.
I have a coworker who's been living with his girlfriend for I think around a decade, and they're not married. He's got 2 kids with her. And, I just had we talk about life when we're bored at work. Who doesn't? And one of the things I asked him is like, well, you're not married to this girl. How come you have kids? And he told me, it's because after high school, all my friends were doing it. And it just seemed like the natural thing to do. And, for better or worse, he's got kids now. He's not crazy about it. But you can just see in his eyes when he talks to you, that he wishes maybe he would have made a different decision. Yeah. All because it was just what everybody else, his peers, were doing.
Yeah, a lot of times it's whether or not you can and never stop to think and whether or not you should. And it's one of those things, too, that always weirds me out that how many times maybe not everybody, but a lot of people hear from their parents when they're growing up, man, if all your friends went and jumped off the bridge, would you do it too? It's interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I have before.
It's
how
interesting.
big's the lake?
That's right. How tall's the bridge, right? How many people are doing it? How hot's the girls that are doing it?
Is there beer involved?
It's one of those things where that same concept applies to everything in life, yet they only seem to apply it to things that are society deems as negative things or bad things.
It's
right?
part of the plan, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of the life scheduled plan. It's a schedule.
Because if you're having kids, you're consuming goods.
Yeah, right. Well, that's another thing too. You become a massive consumer you have no choice at that point. Yep. You are going to be spending an assload of money on dumb things that are all going in the trash.
Yep.
Basically.
Yeah.
Bottles,
diapers.
And it's interesting how they never apply that all my friends are having kids. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean that you need to do it.
Yeah. Well, they took IQ tests and you flunked, so don't have a kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it's I remember when I was in my early 20s and I was dating this girl that to my mom, I guess, seemed like a longer-term relationship, and she made the mistake of talking to her.
How long was that relationship?
Maybe 6 months. Come on,
okay,
I was like 20, But my mom really liked this girl, so she immediately started saying things that were in that direction. I don't remember what they were, but I was just like, whoa, wait a minute, and just seemed like I was like, man, you're getting too close. Got to get rid of this girl, It's over. Had to separate somebody from mom. But, I think a lot of people get in that situation. They start dating somebody. A lot of people that I know date people who take over their lives, like decision-making, how the money is going to be dealt. I mean, everything. I've got tons of male friends and female friends who have gotten in relationships with people, and it went whatever direction their spouse wanted it to go.
Yeah.
They were now just a team player.
Yeah, and I never know, is that, I mean, because obviously, if somebody else is going to take control of your life, you have to relinquish it. For somebody to take control, someone has to relinquish control, right?
Yeah.
So whose fault is that when that happens? So I never know if when I see that, is it when I see, and you look at the side that has relinquished control, and you're like, is that what you always wanted? I mean,
was that better for mankind in general for you to do that?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that person was going to be next Charles Manson, but I'm just saying, I think a lot of people, some of the friends that I know, I'd say at least 50% who have done that, they've given in to whatever the give in is. They probably should have, because they really weren't that great at managing their own life.
Yeah, that's what
I mean?
I've tend to seen too as well. It's the same thing. They just.
But there are lots of people who get stuck and they're like, "Oh crap! Did I just have a twin?"
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, just like things like life can just turn like that when you're just living, and it's just part of living. And so I think a lot of people don't question it so much because it's like, "Oh, I'm just living. This is what happened."
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't. I think because of the training and social training we get, a lot of people don't realize that they have the choice. And I think sometimes just speaking from my point of view, that people should be aware that they have a choice. Let's talk about what life can be without children, at least now, to most younger people, but they don't get that. And I think that's part of the pressuring of the whole device of having children over and over and over and over.
Definitely, because it sure as heck isn't to keep the population alive. We've got that covered.
Got plenty of people.
I think some of that pressure too comes from organized religion.
Absolutely, that's how they got followers.
I think I think the Mormon religion is a good example of that. Is they're pushed by their church to multiply.
Yep.
Need more followers. We need more people out in the fields.
So, I can go out and get them by recruiting them, and if you can't do that, birth them.
Yeah, and we'll change whatever moral law we need to make our plan work.
Oh yeah.
You want 9 wives? Joe, you got 11.
Oh wait, you can't do that anymore.
I might sign up for that.
Yeah.
I know that's an easy sell for most religions. I'm sorry, but if you went to most men and you said, if you join our religion, you get 4 wives.
Yeah, holy crap.
A lot of guys would be like, shit, I can give that a shot.
With that. They know what they're doing.
Well, here's the thing. If you can, and not to pick on Mormon, let's just call it polygamy, because there's been other religions that practice polygamy. So let's put it this way, though. Yeah, you could definitely look at it that way. We're like, wait a minute, 9 wives. Who the heck would want to do? Okay, so what if you had 7 though, and you only spent 1 day a week with them? You really wouldn't be around long enough to deal with any of the bad stuff.
But I don't think you understand this religion enough, Ben. Because,
I do not.
Because the men don't say anything to them. They go do what their chores are and their daily routine is, and the men go to live a separate life.
Yeah.
In most religions, the man is like a statesman, and the women are not allowed to question anything. They're there to take care of the house, take care of the children, cook food, do dishes. There's no, you know what I mean? There's a ruling class, and that's what a lot of religions, build their
even old times too. That was
on.
just your societal constraint, so to speak, too. And that's one thing I always love it when I hear people talk about. Oh, but man, the old days, the olden times, long before we were born, right?
Yeah.
Decades before, people used to stay together forever. Well, you have to analyze how
because they would get stoned to death if they didn't.
That's right, and you had to analyze how things were back then. Back then, you had a couple, a man and a wife, right? And women were not allowed to say anything. There was no voting. There was no nothing. It was woman go do this, woman go do that. Well, hell yeah, marriage lasts forever when there's really only one side that decides everything.
Absolutely,
it's like, who wants to go back to that? I don't really want that responsibility.
Yeah. And if you figure it's 1820, what are you going to do? Go build a house real quick?
Yeah,
on the other side of the ridge.
You're gonna move out and go and go date the lawyer
this
down
dude
the street.
Only beats me Tuesdays. Fuck it, I'll stay.
Exactly. I mean, so it's like, marriages last forever because there wasn't any other option, and it wasn't like it was a miracle. I mean, a beautiful, falling.
There was also
marriage.
The religious end of that, because in these communities, the church had a massive amount of control.
Absolutely. And so they shunned you if you thought about getting divorced or whatever. And,
Scarlet letter, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people too. And I know, like, I've got older uncles and aunts kind of situation where I've known these people forever, and like I've never seen them kiss or be intimate. They're just like, they're a couple of companions. They just live together. They're companions, life companions.
Yeah.
So it's just odd.
Now, okay, so let me pose that question to all of you, because I don't think that I know anyone under the circumstances. Do you know any lifelong companions like that who didn't have children?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, and now let me ask you this.
And I think the reason them not having children was part of the reason they stayed together, because they were both people who were like, I don't want to have kids at all.
Okay, that's cool.
They had different careers, and both of them were actually artists.
Okay.
So they were like, I can't imagine having a kid because it would kill my career.
So imagining like everyone that you know who's older or elderly, whichever, who did have kids, do you feel that you've noticed any some differences between the ones that never had kids and have been together for a long, long time versus the ones that had kids and been together? Other than that, oh yes, we have a family together. I mean, yeah, obviously that's going to change dynamics a little bit. But I mean, I guess what I'm looking for is, do you feel that they were any closer because they had a family together, kids, or
no?
Right.
I feel like, I've got friends in both directions here. I know what you're saying. I feel like the ones that stayed together because they wanted to versus they had to
would be
because
closer,
most
right?
most people who have children, at some point, I think everybody at maybe 10 to 15 years with somebody, you could go, okay, I'm done, and walk away amicably.
Yeah,
and
amicably.
yeah, I got that butterbeer again.
I know,
but you know what I'm saying. But I think people who made the choice to stay and they're still together 35 years later, they weren't legally married. They don't have any children. There's no reason for them to stay together other than they chose to.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay. So I mean, this is kind of going off on a tangent. But I was just talking to one of my buddies about this today. And it's like I said, it's going off on a tangent a little bit, but I think it has relevancy. So we were talking about the whole basically gay relationships, right? So any same-sex relationship. People who choose to, or who, not choose, people who fall in love and are in same-sex relationships, it's like there is something that's eliminated there. There's no sex drive there to reproduce. I'm sorry. There's no drive to reproduce. That's what I mean. There's a sex drive. There's no drive to reproduce. So you kind of like eliminate one of the things that's a huge drive for us to seek in heterosexual relationships, that other person, right? Because that primitive desire to reproduce is always there.
It's part of your primordial being.
That's right, and it will lead people, not everybody, but it has led many people to stay in relationships that weren't necessarily good or healthy or the right one because the sex is amazing or it satisfies that need, and they really don't want to go out and look for new sexual partners or another relationship or whatever. But people who are in a same-sex relationship have that reproduction drive removed and therefore may possibly lead to a deeper, stronger relationship because it has eliminated one thing that may commonly keep heterosexual people together.
But you say that it's such a primal drive, and it is. Why would you think that is removed in a same-sex relationship?
Because they're never going to reproduce like the
with each other, but that drive is still there.
Well, that's something to think about.
Science.
Yes.
And turkey basters.
Yes, turkey basters. Yeah. Petri dish. Okay, yeah, you might be right, but that we were discussing.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier about people who choose to be together. That's one thing you can definitely say about the gay and lesbian community is they're not necessarily getting together because they're reproducing. They're getting together because they love each other,
or just have sex,
or they just sexually attracted, or whatever. But there's a bond that is extremely personal.
I would think it would be much deeper.
And much deeper, yeah. I mean, because a lot of people that I know that get together and they date and the relationship goes okay, and then she's pregnant, and we're having a kid, or however the situation works for anybody.
You always hear that. Well, I wasn't ready for that. But
a lot of people are like, oh well, I wasn't really ready.
But who's ever ready? Then you hear one of your buddies says, oh man, nobody's ever ready.
Yeah. But at the same time, they weren't like planning anything. They weren't trying to like set a plan in motion to control for certain phase of their life. That's something I have done in my life, though. I just chose not to have kids a very long time ago, and I knew because there were certain things I wanted to do, especially working in art and music and things, traveling and everything else. So I made a conscious choice to say, you know what, I don't want to do this, and it definitely shaped a lot, 90% of my dating. For sure, because if you start hanging out with somebody or whatever, and you just start having those conversations, I think people do early on when they meet. Because people are, you're trying to learn about me. I'm trying to learn about you.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's so romantic. So you share everything, dumbass. That's what people do. And so that, whether they believe it or want to or not, I think some people will relinquish, maybe I'd be into having kids because they know I was trying to get her closer or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of that goes on. I've always said, men use sex to get love, and women use love to get. Men use love to get sex, and women use sex to get love.
That's very possible, very very probable. One of my best friends was in a situation like that. The guy she was with, who knows what he really felt, but he said, well, I think I might want kids, but I want them later. So they were young, and then they went through, I don't know how many years they were together, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. They had been married for like 4 or 5 years at that point, and again he became very successful in his career, and she was kind of like, okay, cool. Well, I've been chasing all over the country because they're moving us around, and you're getting more success, and I'm basically a stay-at-home wife at this point. Can I have a baby now? Because I want to stay at home and raise children. And he's like, you know what? I now I know I don't want children because my career is taken off, and I just can't imagine being so stuck down. We're running around all over the place. How are we going to be stuck down when we have kids? And that was basically the end of the relationship. She was like, that is not what we agreed on. You knew I wanted children from the very beginning. I'm out. We're getting a divorce and I'm out. So
that's pretty much his own fault.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, he should have been. Well, I mean, okay, so maybe and again, I wasn't there, so I can't, see how that all went down. But maybe he was truthful and honest in the forefront and said, I really don't know. I think I want to have kids at some point. Or maybe he knew deep down inside he never did,
Yeah, that's something you really have to have lined up with your partner,
Agreed. So, okay, so to delve a little deeper into that situation, because maybe it adds a little better dynamic to it, he was, his kind of whole life took a shift. He majored in something that was totally different than what he went into for a career, which blew up for him, and he got way more successful than somebody who, with his education, probably ever should have been. So when that happened, it may have shifted his life around completely. And he's like, I didn't even think it was possible for me to become successful in this. And I didn't think my life could become this. I mean, he was making a lot of money, working for very, very nice, very good companies, and traveling the world. I mean, he was stationed in Europe for a bit. He was stationed in Canada. He was getting paid all kinds of relocation money or whatever. He was making a lot of money, and together they were enjoying that. So I don't know which it was. Maybe at first he was confused, and when success started kicking in, and he was like, "Forget that, dude. I don't want nothing holding me back."
Well, I think that's brings up a good point. People get out of college or something, and somebody like that, if their career starts going place and they do things, even if they were at one point, especially I think with guys more than anything, if they're like, yeah, kind of on the fence about a kid, or yeah, I'd be okay with it, and something like that happens, you're like, wow, this is amazing. I want to ride this out. And that those decisions are going to be things like not having kids and not being married, situations like that. People can change their mind. Everybody's allowed to change their mind.
Absolutely.
And
we do many times.
And we all do.
What you try to not do is change your mind after you've had children already.
Right.
And you're like,
you're shot in the foot at that point.
Yeah, you're like, damn, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. So that's So. Okay, I don't want to keep this too much on the negative side, and that's why I'm very thankful Glenn's here today because on this topic, because Glenn does want a family.
Hell yeah!
So we definitely want to include, and it's not like we all haven't thought about it too. I mean, I can definitely see the pros of having children, and things that I would want to do in my life with my children or whatever.
Dude, I need my minions.
Exactly.
He needs worker bees.
Exactly.
Child slavery.
Who's gonna plow the field?
I've got plots, man.
That's it, dude. So, okay, joking aside, and I mean, I don't know where it's going to take, wherever you take it. What is your strongest emotion associated with why you want to have children? Can you pick one? I mean, is there one? Maybe they're all equal. I don't know.
I can't go there.
Can't go.
How
there.
about when did you know that you wanted to have
There
kids?
you go.
I've pretty much known my whole life.
Okay.
I don't think there was ever a point in time that I didn't.
Okay.
I've never had the that thought that I don't want kids.
Okay. Not to get too personal, but I know you were in a long-term relationship not long ago, and did you talk with her about that, or did
sure?
You guys...
I mean, any relationship that lasts,
I guess, yeah, you're right.
More than 6 hours.
Isn't that like one of the first questions you ask when you're dating?
I would not even answer that question. Yeah, I would not even answer that question. I would avoid that one to all costs.
I don't know.
Until you've been together for a few months at least. I mean, geez.
Hey, man, questions happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Topics come up.
Yeah. So, how many kids do you want? How big of a family? You big family, small family?
Oh, pretty small. I don't need...
What, 1, 2, 3?
Something like that.
Yeah.
A guard in all four corners of the property.
Yes. We'll go with a small number of 17.
So I can overthrow a government with 17 people.
You know, you can get some taking care of the animals and.
Right.
All right, so
it's a little village.
Yeah, totally.
It's Glenville.
Totally.
Yes.
But Glenn, you also grew up with quite a few siblings, huh?
Yes. And my family's okay. I've got 6 younger siblings.
So that could have something to do
You're
with
a
it
big
as well.
My dad was one of 7.
Oh wow.
My mom was one of 6.
Jeez.
So my family's massive, and all my aunts and uncles have kids. Most of them. I mean, my family is giant.
Yeah, and
we're a clan.
And I think that can actually push people either way, right? They're either, it seems to be like, but you're going to be one of the extremes. You're either going to be like, my family was huge and there was too many kids and I do not want any kids, or my family was huge and I can't imagine it any other way because there's family around you all the time. So it's like
I don't know, it's part of life, man.
Yeah.
And I really want to be able to pass on, I don't know, my thoughts, my processes, and help shape the future in some manner.
Got it. Okay, so I want to ask you, since you're taking the pro part, the for part,
All right.
questions that I've run into as to why people wouldn't want to.
Okay.
Concerns or man, forget that for this reason. So the first one that comes up in a lot of conversations with people, I work with a lot of older guys, 50 plus or whatever, and so I hear their complaints about things, and I hear their happiness about things too, right? And one of the first ones that comes to mind is the concept of how expensive it is to raise even a baby, have a baby, raise a toddler, daycare, schooling, private schooling, depending on where you live. Then when they get older, then college, cars, and okay. So let's say you got 2 or 3 kids, and that's what you're looking at. Does that not discourage you, and why not?
Not really. I mean, I understand it's a large financial burden, but you find a way to get by.
Yeah, it's not like it hasn't been done before,
Right.
right? I mean,
I mean,
everybody finds a way.
So
Okay, so not a concern.
But that's kind of my take on money. I've never been one that just wants the dollar.
True.
Life's always been about more than that to me.
Yeah, you're not a materialistic person, so yeah, I can see that. Okay, what about, there's another one that I hear a lot of guys complain about, especially young guys who haven't really, younger guys. The effects on your wife's, girlfriend's, whatever, the girl's body from, multiple children. Is that a concern to you at all?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I understand that that's part of what happens when
Cause and effect, right?
Cause and effect.
Yeah. So okay, I just wanted to run that one past you because
I mean, at that point, isn't she the mother of your kids? I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of attractive too?
she gets a higher echelon.
Totally.
She gets leveled up. She looked at it a little differently. Okay. So I'm trying to think. Can you guys think of anything else you guys have heard about? Why strong reasons why guys don't want to have kids that we can pose before somebody who wants them.
I think the biggest thing is for a lot of people is the the burden of time on a career or something. Because if you're a younger person or anybody's trying to move forward in a career or something like that.
There you go.
Having kids is tough because if you want to be a devoted father and you're like, I got to work 78 hours a week at this if I'm going to do this, or whatever it is, struggling lawyer, struggling mechanic, whatever it is, you really got to. This is what you have to do to survive. And now, if you throw a kid in the mix, I think a lot of people, their immediate fear is like, my God, I don't want to work 200 hours a week.
That's right.
I'm always going to be poor.
I have quite
if
a few.
I have a kid. I mean, a lot of people are scared of the financial burden.
Think that
big
that's
time. But time, I figure, is the bigger.
Social conditioning.
Yeah.
Again, but that's my perspective on it. I don't.
Yeah, but my bigger point was the time, though. I mean, that kind of sucked at at the end.
But
the time,
it's where you just. I mean, that gets into how you want to spend your life. I mean, really, it's
because you don't necessarily have to have the job that takes all your time, right? You can find
some
something.
People do. My mom works 16 hours a day.
Yeah. So I was going to say, in where I work, we have a number of guys that I've met over the years who have literally left their private industry jobs to go government at any level, so that they can have a guaranteed 8-hour-a-day job and go home at the end of the day to their family.
Yeah.
So that's
so
a major,
they can have time to be with their family. Yeah.
And so that's a major concern, depending on how you are.
Yeah.
Some guys want the job that they're gone all the time to be away from their family. So I mean,
that's true.
It does go both ways. But I have met a number who left private just for that reason.
Yeah. But again, for me, I think that's most of the people I know who chose not to have kids was more so a thing of like their career or trying to work or do something or build something, whether they're starting a foundation or they're starting a small business or whatever. I have a lot of friends who are involved in nonprofit and programs down in LA that help homeless and other people as well. And they don't want to have kids because their life is a different, there's a different love that they give that energy to. And I think sometimes with artists and other people, that's the same way too. Not that I'd be selfish and say, I only want to make my art. If I were to have a kid, I would have a kid, but I choose not to because I'm like, there's something else I want to do that's my passion. and I'm not passionate about raising another being.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in any sort of negative way, but some people just are and some people aren't. And I think but what I think is weird is when you have the conversation with people, it's weird. It's like politics, especially if you're talking to your parents or something. Your opinion really doesn't matter, and you should not talk about this.
People can get really defensive super fast about it. It is like religion or politics.
Yeah.
You're right, especially if you're talking to somebody who already has children.
Oh yeah, they're real defensive.
Well,
oh boy,
man, I just really, really want to experience that interaction with a small young mind.
I totally get it. I mean,
to witness and help shape the growth of it. I mean, that's
No, I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got nieces and nephews, and I've got nieces and nephews that are almost 30 now, and so I hung out with them when they were little kids, and experienced watching them go through teenage lives and all that stuff, and it's like, that's pretty cool to see, but I think when it comes to kids in general, for me, after having nieces and nephews of all the ages, from 2 to like 6, that's the fun time. Like anytime after that, they're just, now they got an opinion, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, it's like actually dealing with a human. This sucks.
Yeah, stop having independent thought.
Go back to running and hitting your head and yelling.
That's when you just dose them. You're gonna talk like that. Here, take some of this and go experience.
Did you grow up in the era when you had a toothache or something? Your dad might take a little whiskey and rub it inside you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, our grandpa. My grandma rubbed whiskey.
So, or when we weren't feeling well, we'll take a shot of brandy.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Little helps you sleep, man.
Yeah, a little bit of grandpa's cough syrup, huh?
Right.
Yep. And
I like it.
Hey, man, it works.
Yeah.
Parenting from 1909.
That's right. Well,
hey,
I would probably made a lot better people than parenting of fucking 2000.
How many of us are here because of that? I mean, those obviously the people survived, and they continue to procreate and made our lineage, right? So obviously something worked before pharmaceuticals, right?
Not having a helmet gave me a hard head, and it's made it possible for me to survive.
That's right.
And you know what? When you protect everybody, you don't weed out the idiots.
That's true.
Natural selection ceases to run its course.
Right. When we protect ourselves from natural selection, everything's just going to fall apart. We shouldn't do it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for, not behaving in a dangerous situation or
so that proposes a question, Glenn. Are you going to put helmets on your kids? Are you gonna be one of those parents that's like, hey, he can't go outside without a helmet
pads,
on.
Elbow pads, helmet.
Yeah, you can't go outside without full hockey gear on because they'll get hurt.
Depends on the situation. All right, if they're
if there's like a hailstorm outside and you're
they're
throwing
getting
them out
on the dirt bike, fuck yes, they're wearing a helmet.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
If they're pedaling their tricycle outside, in the backyard on flat ground,
that scraped knee might be a good scraped knee.
Right.
Teach you to get back up on that bike. Yeah,
Calluses.
for sure.
I mean, helmets are pretty important, but I don't know about the elbow pads and shin pads and all that other crap. Protect the brain.
Yeah. Imagine your life had you never had scraped knees and scraped elbows. I mean,
dude,
what would you have learned, dude? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
No way. That's no
the
life.
battle scars
that
of
makes
life.
sissies, dude.
Eating shit and some epic road rash.
That's right.
It builds character.
Hell yeah. Yep. And it teaches you how to patch yourself up too.
Right. Shake it off. Walk it off.
Get that first aid kit.
Pick the rocks out of that.
Yeah, clean it out. Put a bandage on it. You're good, man.
Keep on going. So that's the kind of dad you're going to be.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I like it. I like it. I like Glenn's kids already.
There's hope for them.
Yeah, that kind of pours into different facets of raising a child too. I know I have some friends who had their first kid, and kids are already like 5 years old now. I think I've seen them a handful of times since they had their kid. And there's been situations where you could bring the kid out, everybody could hang out, but it's like, oh no, we got the baby.
Yeah.
And I was always like, it never really registered for me. I'm like, okay, so you have a kid, and this is in a friendly environment with adults. Everybody here is chill, and why wouldn't you bring the kid? Or, and then I have this other couple who we were at a party, everybody's chill, everybody's relaxed, we're all getting drunk for sure. But the mother was on the couch with like a 6-month-old baby and just playing, and people would come over and sit and talk with her and interact with the kid. And so, I never really understood people who just want to have kids and then just like they cut off all of their life, like their social life.
It's really not
They're just
necessary.
at home coddling the child. Really, that thing needs to get out in the world. And
socialize, get a job.
Get out, get a job. Start bringing home the money.
There's a portion of that is that
protective nature.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I guess it's all how you were raised, and
yeah, how you were raised, what you experienced, how you put together, how to, we assemble by
motherly instinct. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yes, also conditioning. But, there's a fair bit of hormonal changes that happen, and our brain chemistry shifts.
Oh, definitely. Women's brain chemistry shifts.
Big time.
Big time. But, another thing, too, is, I have a buddy of mine who just had his second kid, and he was an older dad. He didn't have his first kid until he was like 46, and now he's got two. And he, for a long time, was like sort of scared to leave the house because, it was his first kid, didn't really know what to do. What if I don't have enough stuff? There's a lot, you're carrying like a cargo container full of stuff if you have a child that's under like 2.
Yep.
And I think I see some, women go to shows and things like that and carry their kids, and they got the couple kids in the packs. Moms that are good moms got it down, but it's tough.
Yep.
It's a lot. And some people, I just don't think they
want to deal with it.
Or want to deal with it. My buddy, he was just like, man, it's just so hard to do. And with me, and he's like, I'm just not that great at it. So a lot of times they just hung out at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you guys want to come hang out with us and at the house? Yeah, we're great with that, but we don't want to really go out. Yeah, I can see that because you're right, packing up a lot of crap just to get out.
Yeah, I'm just not ready for that.
Yeah.
I'm really just not ready to dedicate so much of my time and effort. I mean, maybe another 15 years, 20 years maybe, but not right now.
Going back to playing off of what Glenn was talking about with the man, I am super OCD, and the idea of trying to lay out the path of construction for the mind and emotional state of another being just sounds like it would take all of my life. It would take the rest of my life in order, and everything that I had to map out everything that I calculated to be required to make this human being successful and well-rounded. And I mean, just think about the complexities involved in what you hope to expose a new human being to in order to get them to follow a path that not only works for them, but is also one of success defined by the particular era, society, and geographical location that you are in. So this is the kind of crap
you're
that
putting way too much thought into it.
Right.
And you can try it. You can try it as hard as you can, and the kid could turn out to be a little bastard.
And it won't matter anyway. But see, that would drive me insane. That's the pressure I would put on myself because of my own nature. Yeah. So that doesn't even involve the child at all.
So Ben's one of those dads that just beats his kid for not being better at something. Right. I told you I wasn't as good as that, and you can be.
And then has a heart attack.
Yeah.
At 38.
Yeah. So really,
beating an infant.
Yeah. Really, my desire to not procreate is actually an effort in my own longevity of life. I'm trying to live longer. It's self-preservation.
Dude, your hair would be totally gray in like 3 months.
Dude, let me say this, okay? Another thing for me with the kids is my brother has 4 children, and I have watched this somewhat stable guy turn into a old dad who has just been beaten to death by these kids.
Wow.
In lots of ways. Just trying to be a good dad and trying to make the right decisions, and kids not listening and being teenagers and just the whole
Getting into
thing.
trouble.
Getting into trouble, the whole thing. I mean, his son was as bad as we were, which is terrible to your parents. But we were from a different generation. Even though if we were bad kids, I wasn't an asshole to my mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If she said, this is how it's going to be, I was like, cool, I'm good with that.
Got no choice.
But when I wasn't there, I was running amok. It's just the way, but it's weird. Like with his kids, I watch them just be jerks, like total jerks. They're like in their late 20s now. And I'm just like, man, it's like his son is like 31 or something now, and he's like just now starting to sort of communicate like a human being.
That sounds about right.
And I'm like, wow, man. I'm like looking at that kid, and I'm just like, God, you were such a little dick to your dad. I mean, he really tried to help you out, and I think a lot of parents go through that. And for me, I don't think I could let that go just because it's my kid. Yeah. Somebody treating me like that. Yeah. I went out of my way not to make my mom hate me.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of kids do that to their parents.
Yeah.
Plus, it depends on the kind of trouble they are, too, because if they're getting caught for all the trouble they're doing and they're bringing you all kinds of legal problems.
Absolutely.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, that's a whole different story than just, being bad and being smart about it and not
stealing
getting caught.
some beers from the freezer or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
and they can bring you, and what if your kid develops some addiction? Like, man, that would be brutal to not be able to help that little being that you care so much about. You just want to like slap him in the face, and say, look at what you're doing. Look at reality. Look at life. Look what's out there. and you can't make that change for them. That would be rough.
And that's part of the stuff that has to be taken into consideration when you decide whether or not you want to have children. It's not, I think I can give up my office so that my baby can have the no.
That's a definite.
That's a definite. There's no thinking on that one, right? Oh, I think I can handle working less and being here more, and then sleepless nights or whatever. People don't. I feel like they don't go past maybe up to college, their high school. Even though there's no way, if you've never had a child before, there's no way you can anticipate how bad the teenage years are going to be.
Oh, yeah.
They might be okay. They might be horrible.
Absolutely.
But worse than that, this is an entity you are tied to until your death.
You're legally bound to this.
That's right. And well, after they turn 18, maybe not, but you're
yeah, but if you got a 15, 16-year-old kid just setting stuff on fire or selling drugs in school, I mean,
but that's only
a lot of kids get in trouble.
Yeah, that's only to high
there's
school.
There's some great
though.
ones out there, but there's
I knew some little bastards in high school
right?
that I would have been
absolutely.
ashamed to be my spawn.
And that's only till high school. That's only up to high school. What happens if it gets arrested when it's 32, 30? I mean, you're still going to be the mom and dad that sees it as my little baby, that I raised from nothing and from little or whatever.
See, I couldn't do that. I don't know. I mean, maybe I could. I'm saying this from an outside perspective, but I don't think if I raised a child and they just were just a
lost cause.
A lost cause, no matter how good a job or how much energy
more
you
than
dumped into them.
one, so you can
That's the reasoning. Yeah.
So you
Get
scatter
two,
about.
kill the weak one.
Hey, man.
Let the stronger one eat the weaker one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, lock him in the basement for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know this is a horrible story, but when I was a kid, I knew these two brothers that were just always fighting each other, and their dad would make them fight each other. So they would get over the argument, and I was like, Jesus Christ, one of them just beat the piss out of the other one, and the dad was like, I don't care. Just like he would make them fight it out, and I was like, this is child abuse.
Yeah.
Watching these but the same thing, like I've had friends who have siblings that just beat the crap out of each other, hit each other with stuff, try to stab each other.
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, you're the parent trying to pay the bills and go to work, and your kid's over there stabbing the other one or trying to. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah,
I just don't think I want those kind of consequences anywhere near my reality.
Yeah.
Brutal.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, we were never.
But
allowed to
I
do.
feel like that's a failure in parenting if it's
I don't know.
to that point.
I don't know.
Depends on how they turn out, I guess.
Well, you can always give them up for adoption.
Well, again, I know a lot of people around the world, but I knew this woman who had a child who had was born with some mental issues. They developed really quickly.
That would be my nightmare.
They developed really quickly into violent outbursts. Animals was the first thing. By the time the kid was 7, 8 years old, they had to take him away. I mean, he's I don't know exactly what what his determination of his mental
to be professionally hospitalized,
but he has to be hospitalized. He cannot function. So that was her son.
Yeah. So okay, that's an excellent topic to touch on because I have cousins that are like that in my family who have a permanently since birth mentally ill child. I don't even know if I'd call it mentally because it's a total physical immobilization as well, and that was a heavy hit too to think about because you're like there was nothing wrong with them. They didn't do drugs. They didn't drink. They didn't do anything that deserved that or
they
to
probably
cause
ate McDonald's.
that. Yeah. Well, okay. There was probably fast food. However, we don't know for sure that that's the cause of any of that, right? Okay. That said, though, that aside, whatever the cause was, watching them deal with that and thinking that, dude, that could totally, as far as I know, because they didn't do anything to make that child that way.
Yeah.
That being the case, it seems to me that maybe it could happen to me. I didn't do anything to it.
Oh, absolutely. There's
But think about not take it to the extent. Okay, we've identified and discussed the consequences and what you would have to. What the cost of having a child if the child's healthy? What if the child is permanent disability its entire life? And my neighbor is one of these people. She's a single mom now. Her daughter is permanently disabled. She gets around. She can communicate. She's a person, but she is permanently disabled. I think she's in her mid-20s. And my neighbor has had a lot of trouble keeping a guy in her life because it's a heavy thing, and
it's a heavy burden.
It's tough, man. And they also have the fear that the daughter, the child, will outlive her, even with the conditions of being a special needs individual.
Yeah.
So who's going to take care of your kid after you're gone with a permanent? That kind of stuff scares the crap out of me. Maybe it doesn't happen. Obviously doesn't happen to everybody because we all know lots of people with healthy children. But that chance scares me a lot.
Yeah, then I think about all the drugs and alcohols that I've consumed.
I mean, damn, what if that has effect? Okay, so now adding to that, there is I want to call it a myth at this point, but I mean, it really does have some truth to it, I guess, that guys can have kids all their years, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is not actually true. We can impregnate somebody and make a child. Sure, we continue producing.
But doesn't mean it's the strongest swimmer.
Sure, and there's actually one of these days we may bring my friend who is a genetics major into this and very interested in this kind of stuff to talk about this and other stuff that's really cool. But nevertheless, there are genetic degradation. There is genetic degradation that happens the older we get, and it starts about.
That's
for
why
male.
you just get some of your swimmers frozen. Call it good.
And that's,
throw it in the freezer. Jizz in the cup. Throw it in the freezer.
This is 28-year-old.
You're for later, baby.
this is exactly what why I wanted to bring this topic up and go this route, because that's what I wanted to ask you guys. So, being that there is genetic degradation that happens on the male end of our DNA, I don't have all the details, nor do I understand it, but I believe something along the lines of the caps that connect and piece together the long string that pieces together the female and the mothers together.
Those proteins wear down every
They
time
wear
it
down.
divides.
Exactly. So, and the older we get, the weaker those links become, and that it leads to things like Down syndrome, and there's a whole bunch of other.
Well, and it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. The older you are,
True.
the more risk you take at having children.
So, but we can stretch it further, right? Because
men
we
generally, if they're healthy and
I mean, because we can impregnate a 25-year-old when we're 50, right? I mean,
most do.
Well, hopefully, that's what I'm hoping for. If I'm going to have kids, it's probably going to go down like that. But nevertheless, so for me personally, I have looked into and am strongly considering. Now that I'm in my mid-30s, I don't really know how far I want to push it. Donating sperm, having it frozen, and just paying those dues or whatever, just in case I do decide when I'm 45 or 50. Well, actually, the ideal was if I had it frozen, I was thinking about now, and then about 40, I would get a vasectomy, so I don't worry about it anymore.
You're making canned food.
That's an interesting way of putting it. So,
we're stocked up for a Holocaust.
So go through, then I wouldn't have to worry about it beyond that. But if I still wanted to have children, I wouldn't have to try the reversal surgery, which is an option. But even if you do the reversal surgery, now you're...
Does that mean you're a woman?
Not from anyone I've talked to, but okay. Even if you do the try and reverse it, or the turkey baster thing or whatever, you're still utilizing sperm that's from you when you're 45 or 50. So I don't know. Have any of you guys thought about going that route of actually
getting my balls clipped? No.
Well, no.
He was talking about shaving them once.
I nicked a sack once, and I'll never do it again.
Not cutting the hedges naked anymore.
I kind of feel like once you have your balls clipped once, you're not going to want to go in for another time to get that shit reversed.
No, okay, that wasn't what I was asking. What I was asking was with respect to the cryogenically freezing stuff.
The freezing.
I could jizz in a cup and put it in the freezer.
But before that, regarding the clipping thing, no, I think there is a procedure where they can undo the cut and try to reconnect the tube, but I don't think that has a high percentage of success rate. So what they do is they actually go into the testicles and remove the sperm out. So they literally turkey base that stuff out. And
that's if you've had a vasectomy, you mean?
Yeah. Okay. You still want to get somebody pregnant, right? So they can actually go in and remove it that way manually. But that's, again, both of those procedures are much more intrusive than
he just
the vasectomy.
talked about removing sperm manually.
I mean, yeah, and not in the good way.
And it went over everyone's head,
and not in the good way. So no, my question was: have any of you guys thought about freezing? As an option, just so that you keep the younger sperm available as an option. Doesn't mean it's going to work.
No, I never thought about it.
Never thought about it.
I got some pretty good genes. I'm not really worried about it.
No. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. And another thing too, when it comes to genetics of people, say, okay, I'm going to freeze my sperm when I'm 32 years old, because I think that's the perfect age or whatever. And say you get to be 45, and you say, now I'm with somebody, now that I saved this. To me, I feel like that DNA that's that version of the frozen sperm. To me, it's amazing that it still stays frozen, because you know what food does in my refrigerator after 2 years. That part kind of freaks me out in general. It is
a different process than sticking food in your freezer.
I understand. I understand that, but you know what I mean. When I think about it, I'm like, that kind of weirds me out a little bit. But then also, I've always believed that as you live life, your DNA is changing because of things that you do, that you learn, how you grow as a person.
Yeah,
I
you're
think your
damaging
DNA
it
you're
as you go
damaging
through
it.
life.
Pretty much.
No.
But I mean, you can be a totally different person at 40 than you were at 20. So,
And you have a valid point in that we do not know everything that gets transferred via DNA.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that there's personality traits, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we've established that. We don't know to what degree that goes. And you're right. The older the DNA, the longer you have been producing your chromatic structure and all that other stuff. How does that change as you get older, and how does it change the offspring?
because your body chemistry of who you are as a chemical in general is changing all the time.
Yeah.
And you can't, what in hereditary things that you do or become or that are interest to you. I feel like as the older I've gotten, I've identified myself to my parents more because as I've gotten older, I've seen some of those traits in me easier in them.
Going down that path, though, we have to wonder at what is the rate at which the change. Let's say that change does exist, and let's say it does affect your DNA as you get older. Is it like logarithmic, where it's like when you're young, when you're 15 years old to 25, it's like, whoa, this is a crazy change. I'm a totally different person. But then when you get to like 35 to 40, it's not really that much of a difference, So like,
not really, but I mean, you think about what you were like when you were 18 or 20 compared to 30.
Sure, but I mean,
Yeah, but I don't think that changes your DNA.
You don't feel like it does?
Absolutely, it does.
I feel like it has to.
I think if you kill somebody when you're 20 years old and you leave some DNA, you can still get caught with it when you're 40 years old. It's the same.
No, there's okay.
I'm just talking about more like traits
that carry over through your DNA, like
Yeah.
into your offspring. So Thomas's concern is the older we get, we may be transferring a better person, so to speak, via personality traits. But again, we don't know to what degree that is.
No,
I
I'm
don't
with
think
you.
science is even mapped.
Epigenetics.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it's called? Okay. Well, there you go. We have a
What
name
is it?
for it.
Epigenetics.
So I mean, because of the few things I know about DNA, you do change as your
Right.
body gets older. Things change about it, and that's the whole thing about fertility too. Is you're like, oh, when you're young, you're more fertile. That's why people want to freeze things. But my what I'm saying is, I think the person that you become later on is a different genetic person. And sometimes for me, I think maybe I don't necessarily want to have my kid be the person who would have got somebody pregnant at 30 versus 42. I don't know.
So
It's an interesting concept. It's just something that I think about when I think about the whole aspect of children or freezing sperm or things like that.
Okay. What do you got, Glenn?
Yeah, so there are traits that, are genetic traits or characteristics that are activated or turned off as we, or through situations, the situational, conditional.
Okay.
Experiences, traumas, and it essentially flips a switch. I mean, this is as far as I understand.
Got it. Yeah, we're not geneticists here, so
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Go out and do your own research.
Yes. Don't quote me.
Yeah.
mean-
Never take anything you hear for truth, especially if you hear it on the radio or through the podcast.
Or from the other
Actually,
side of a microphone.
Don't
right.
believe what you read. Don't believe what you hear.
Always do your own research. But yeah, and the fact is they do not. Science has not mapped all of this stuff out, so we really don't know. It could be and it could not be, either or. But I mean, I do believe too that personality traits do get passed down. I mean, there's crap in my life and how I deal with situations. It's like, damn it, that's exactly what my dad would have done.
Oh, yeah,
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
That's that. So it has to be there somehow. Now the question of whether or not waiting longer to acquire more of these things before you pass your DNA, I don't know. But then also we do know for sure that it increases the risk of other problems. So I don't know. Maybe which is better or which is worse.
Yeah.
And like I said too, if you freeze, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still use your own age, your current sperm, right? You just use the older stuff first because hopefully it was at a younger period with a higher success rate. That's really what we're going
Stronger
for, right?
swimmers.
Well, yeah.
But for me, again, I think about the whole philosophy of like freezing and like, I don't know, just something about that craziness to me. I understand it. I've watched tons of crazy stuff about genetics and freezing things. So
way too clinical for me.
It's way too clinical for me. I feel like
that's where we're heading anyway, though.
It's it's a processing. I feel like just the transformation of that sperm. For me, I don't know, it just weirds me out, man. It's like filtering something through it or putting it in a different container and then jumping it back in where you started, or I don't know.
Let's go the Gattaca route because ultimately that's where we're going to end up going anyway. When we get to that point, you won't conceive naturally anyway.
Yeah.
Because you can't, because the DNA has to be altered before the sperm and egg, or before the egg is impregnated, right? They have to pull out the two DNAs and then combine them, or do it beforehand, and make sure that they remove all those things that they removed, like in the movie, right? Inclination to addiction, or diseases, or all kinds of stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
That stuff has to be removed outside the uterus. Once it's been done and the egg is what is the word, impregnated? How do you fertilized? Thank you. When the egg is fertilized, then it has to be put back into the uterus, right? So you're not going to have sex and make a kid. You're going to go to your local geneticist, and they're going to take an egg from her, and they're going to take sperm from you, and they're going to alter to make sure that you produce the best of what the two of you can be. They're going to put it back together, and they're going to put it inside of her, and there's your baby. So we're already going to head to that clinical aspect, and it'll be just like Gattaca. Like, oh, you might say, no, we're going to conceive naturally. Well, your child will be essentially ostracized or punished within society for not being the best that it can be. So they'll push you into it because it won't be able to achieve what the greatness of all the.
Well, you're genetically engineering humans, which is, to me, goes back to thinking like Hitler.
Yes,
trying to make this perfect race. It's not about being perfect. It's about being imperfect. That's what life is about.
Remember what he said in the movie, though. He said, "Keep in mind, this child is still you and your husband or whatever. It's simply the best of you two.
Yeah,
you could conceive." That. He says you could conceive naturally 1,000 times and never produce such results.
Yeah.
Who the hell's going to say no to that?
Well, I think in a greedy culture and the way that we've been trained to think about vanity, everyone's going to say that. That's part of the problem. I mean, I've heard stories for decades now. People going, "Oh, I want to freeze my sperm. I want to do this." Or, "Oh, can we make it a blonde baby? Or can we do this? Or
can you guarantee me a boy?
Guarantee me a boy, man." Yeah, and that's the part of it that freaks me out. So that whole phase of it, to me, and the reproduction of humans really freaks me out. That's another reason I would not be a part of the freezing.
It is scary because one of the results of that in the movie was that, what do they call it? Genocide? Genoism. Yeah, it was a new form of racism, right? A new form of prejudice, and that's exactly what'll happen.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Segregation by genes.
Hell yeah, dude. They'll have it down. We no longer discriminate via a race or color or anything. Now we have it down to a science, right?
So we'll have the human species will split up into different categories of human.
And there'll be 100-year wars.
There already are, man.
I know, but these will be new ones.
Oh, okay.
Those who can afford geneticists,
with
their
new
local
heroes,
geneticists, those who
Glenn.
can't.
Right. You'll have the genetically modified ruling the
non-GMOs.
Right. Yep. I mean, that's definitely. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, any last comments? Or are we? I think we're about out of time here.
Stay away from the freezer.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and until next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.